T. Higgins has requested a trade after being tagged by the Cincinnati Bengals. Give me your top landing spots for T. Higgins now that he is, officially on the market.
For me, actually number one on my list was the Panthers.
Oh,
Like I
really?
said, but
I mean,
because
they need somebody.
that was their biggest need was wide receiver.
Right.
They got to get a receiver for Bryce Young. You can't be successful with no receivers. We saw what
Right.
happened last year.
Yes,
Like
we
I said,
did.
now that they traded for Deontay Johnson, I don't know if that changes things. That probably will change things. I'm thinking
That's
probably
huge. Yeah.
who else maybe needs a wide receiver. I mean, you could maybe see. I mean, I
Of course, the
know some
Bills,
people are
the
wondering,
Chiefs.
yeah, Bills, Chiefs potentially, because especially the Chiefs, we know what their receiving core. They have some talent there, but
Do.
obviously always could get that number one guy.
It's
I
really
know,
only Rashee Rice and Kelsey now, though. They cut MVS. Sky Moore's not doing
yeah.
much.
I mean, and then I know some people were maybe thinking, Colts if Michael Pittman didn't come back, but he came back. So
Right.
obviously that's going to be the case. You think who?
I said I still think the Colts are a suitor, no doubt. Anthony Richardson's going to be special. I think. What's it? Darby? Are you being for real? Did T. Higgins just go to the Chiefs? Don't tell me that. Hold on. I have to look this up right now. Did he just go to the Chiefs? Darby loves to troll, but nope, he didn't. Okay, we're just you got to be careful, man. You got to give me some more context. That would be a great landing spot for sure. But now I think the Colts would be good. Not to cut you off, I want to let you continue on. But with Anthony Richardson and Shane Steichen, I think T. Higgins could really come to life for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And then also, I mean, I know they have to deal with their cap situation because they're in a terrible cap situation right now. Chargers probably are going to end up cutting Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. If they can get the cap situation right, maybe there. Thing is, T. Higgins is going to want monster money. So we got to also think about teams who could pay that. Could potentially the Commanders be in there? Team up with Terry.
He's got a big market.
Yes, you could team up with Scary Terry. I mean, Denver, since they got rid of Jerry Jeudy, and could that potentially be a landing spot as well? Just a few teams that potentially could be in that direction. And then we got to see what happens with Jacksonville and Calvin Ridley. If they don't get Calvin Ridley back,
he wants to come back reportedly.
Yeah, he wants to come back. So I think that'll happen. But it's just if something changed in the ninth hour, with that could potentially be a good landing spot. Now, obviously, the Bengals have been like, we would like to still keep him, but I get it. You're probably about to give Jamar Chase a monster. Like, he's about to become probably the highest paid receiver in the game.
He's going to have to make 30. Him, CD, and Justin Jefferson are all looking for that Tyreek Hill money. No doubt.
So, and T may think I'm 20. I may be worth 25. You may not want to put $55 million into two receivers.
Right.
So it has to be a team who obviously has cap, who's willing to invest, and probably feels like they need a receiver to take them over the top.
Yeah, no doubt. Very, very good points there. I think overall the top landing spots would be the Bills, of course. Well, let me say this first. T. Higgins has been anointed by some to be respected as a wide receiver one. And while I do believe he can do that, he puts up an average of 920 yards and about 4 or 5 touchdowns a year. To me, that's not 2024 and onward wide receiver one production. If you're a wide receiver one, I'm going to need at least 1,000. Probably in that 1,100 to maybe 1,300 yard range. And I'd like to get at least 7 to 10 touchdowns out of you. And when you get to double-digit touchdowns, I have a lot of respect for that. There's not many receivers in the league every year. And on average every year, like a Mike Evans or, a Randy Moss could do where they're giving you, 11, 12, 14, 15 touchdowns, maybe not year over year. But like you look at Mike Evans. Mike Evans has had 12 plus touchdowns in 5 of his 10 years in the league. And he's regarded as that wide receiver one because he's had 1,000 yards for a decade straight. Now, not to compare apples to apples, but to me, T. Higgins would be a very solid wide receiver two. If he went to a team to be a wide receiver one, which like we saw, he can have those 1,000-yard seasons with Cincinnati. But I think there was a reason Jamar Chase was able to take that wide receiver one position. Jamar was just better. And it's not to say that T isn't, but if he went to the Bills, I think he would do well alongside Stephon Diggs. We've talked about the Bills needing a second option for Josh Allen.
The issue with that is, though, not meaning to cut you off,
no,
is that
you're good.
Bills already have the tension with Diggs. Do you really want to bring in a receiver who's going to demand targets and now potentially make Diggs want to leave?
Yeah.
That's the only reason why the Bills is very shaky to me.
Right.
Just because Diggs is already wanting 15, 20 targets a game. He wants to get his yards and his touchdowns. He believes he's one of the best, if not the best receiver in the game. So you're breaking in T. Higgins, paying him monster money may rub Diggs the wrong way if they went down that route, So that would be the big thing. Because if you're bringing in T. Higgins, you're probably bringing him to be your probably your number one. I think teams view him as that because you would
Yeah,
assume, okay, Jamar Chase is
he
in
has the
there.
potential.
If Jamar Chase isn't there, clearly his numbers are going to go up because Jamar
Mhm.
Chase to me is like I call a volume receiver. He'll get you 10, 12, 13 catches a game.
Oh,
T.
yeah.
Higgins is more of a I can get you 6 catches for 100 yards and maybe a
Right.
touchdown. Like I said, Jamar can get you 13 for 180 and like that.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, no, that's a good point, and I don't know, what Stefan's contract looks like with the Bills, but if Stefan Diggs were to eventually move on or have some sort of reason to not play, which I don't think is realistic, but we could see T. Higgins step in as that number one receiver for a team like the Bills. I think the Jets could be a solid spot as well. Garrett Wilson is there, and T. Higgins could possibly come in. I don't think he could be that wide receiver one, but if it did happen again, he's got the potential. Wouldn't surprise me. We've seen Garrett Wilson be an offensive rookie of the year, though we know the production that he's capable of. Obviously, the Kansas City Chiefs, obviously, the Los Angeles Chargers, they both need guys like crazy. Now, while they do have talent, and they have a lot of talent at the quarterback position, very solid head coaches, of course, with Harbaugh coming into LA, T. Higgins would be a very, very nice addition there. I think the Baltimore Ravens also. I don't believe OBJ is going to be back in Baltimore. I think it's really just going to be the Zay Flowers and, the Rashad Bateman show, possibly. And while I
mhm,
did like Rashad Bateman coming out of the draft, I think he's been a respectable player. I think we can all sit here and agree that, T. Higgins would be a nice addition there as well. Of course, you talked about the Steelers. I think 100% would be in play. But in
mhm,
George Pickens is that bona fide one. And again, I just view T. Higgins as a number two receiver. Maybe I'm a little jaded because Jamar Chase came in, blew us away with, the best rookie season ever with basically 1,400 yards, 13 touchdowns. But, T. Higgins is still, a very good player, no doubt. And with Deontay Johnson getting out of there, I could see him and George Pickens being a solid duo. Of course, we talked about the Colts, the Packers. Who's their wide receiver one? I mean, Romeo Dobbs is solid. Christian Watkins is solid. They lose Aaron Jones, though. They're going to need some firepower at that receiving position. And especially with what Jordan Love just did, you don't want to spoil that. You don't want to knock that momentum down. Giving him a guy like T. Higgins, I think if you put T. Higgins with Jordan Love, you're going to see a 1,200 yard, 8 to 9 touchdown year with T. Higgins. And in the comments, y'all don't jump on me and say, oh, well, you just gave him a wide receiver one output. If he's in the right situation, he can be a wide receiver one. And you can't say that for everyone in the league. But again, to me, he's more of that wide receiver two type of guy. And maybe I'm a little bit of a homer here, but I believe that, T. Higgins could go to the Saints. Of course, we're in cap hell, so the money wouldn't work out. But Michael Thomas is going to get out of there. We know Olave's the one. Shaheen
mhm,
more than likely going to be the two. We got A.T. Perry that we just brought in from the draft, who I think can, be the next two or not three, for us in that position. But again, T. Higgins coming in, he could overtake that two position from Rashid. You could have Olave one, T. Higgins two, maybe have Rashid three for the deep threat, and then bring in A.T. Perry. But I'd like to see A.T. Perry get a little more a little more touches there as well. But despite all this that we've laid out, do you think he should just try to go back and forth with Cincinnati and get a deal to stay with the Bengals?
I mean, I think that's what it's going to turn into. I think T. Higgins is definitely a guy who may not be moved for the draft because I think it's one of those things where you're always more valuable before the draft because everybody knows your picks, everybody knows how much their value are for this current draft class,
Mm-hmm.
and so and then what's hurting him is that I can see the Bengals looking at this wide receiver class, one of the deepest wide receiver classes we've had in a while, a lot of talented wide receivers coming out,
Oh
and
yeah.
just saying, listen, we have a number that we're willing to give you. And knowing that if you don't want to stay, we can go and just draft a replacement. We do still have Jamar Chase, who will probably give him what he wants. So it really is just a matter of what does T. Higgins want?
Mm-hmm.
Does he want to stay in Cincy? Is he okay being the number two? Does he want the challenge of being a number one and
Right.
getting his money?
Right.
That is things that he has to answer. I think him requesting this trade was him kind of saying, I want to go get my money and I want to go be a number one. And this
Mm-hmm.
could also just be about the money. He may be
Right.
okay being a number two as long as he gets his money, which
Right.
the Bengals may not be willing to give him, like I said, because of the Jamar Chase contract. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things where I think the Bengals, like I said, I think the Bengals still want to bring him back. It's
Mm-hmm.
just they're gonna have negotiations and they're eventually gonna get to a point where they're like, this is where we are.
Mm-hmm.
This is the peak of what we're going to do. If not, then we will move. We will become more aggressive to trade you. And that's when I said, like,
Mm-hmm.
when you get to the draft, that's when you'll see teams become a little bit more aggressive.
Right.
Bengals maybe could package Higgins if they
Right.
wanted to trade up for a guy, maybe
On an
we'll give
AJ
you
Brown,
Higgins
Hollywood
and
Brown type of
this,
thing.
So all these are potential avenues the Bengals could go down. So they have options with T, or this could all just end in no extension and T Higgins just playing on the franchise tag, which no player ever wants to do.
Right. But here's the thing too, and hear me out. Would you say 21.8 million for a guy like T. Higgins in a wide receiver 2 role? And the Bengals have already said that when they tagged him, they said, "Look, we're willing to pay you 21.8 in 2024." Wouldn't you say that's fair for T. Higgins though? I get it if he wants the 25 and maybe close to 30, I probably wouldn't pay him over the 25 and maybe with his recent production over that 22. But Cincinnati's already agreed with that tag to pay him 21.8.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where the franchise tag is interesting because you always think is
Kind of
when you're
sucks.
just the person who looks at it, it's like, well, you're getting paid top five money. But
Mhm.
the thing is that what players want is that long term commitment. They want the
Mhm.
guaranteed money. They want to know if
Exactly.
I
They want
get
that
hurt
financial
that I'm
security.
not screwed. Because if he gets hurt this year and he's out for the year, and
Done.
exactly. And I think it's just about that financial security. So I think you can pay him upwards. He had some injuries this past year. The previous 2 years, he had 1,000 yard seasons. So I think it's and listen. At the end of the day, the Bengals know one of the reasons why we've been so successful is because we've had Higgins,
Mhm.
Jake, and Burrow. We have had dynamic passing offenses. They're always in it because of that. So
Mhm.
it's almost like, do you really want to break that up? I think that they know the value T. Higgins brings to this
Right.
offense and what they want to be passing wise with Joe Burrow coming back next year. It's
Right.
just a matter of, like I said, them finding the right number they want to pay him. And like I said, T. Higgins wanting that long term security for
Can't
his
blame him
whatever
either.
contract he wants. Because, like I said, no player likes playing on the franchise tag.
Yep, you want that financial security, like you said, with the injuries and everything. The two sides have until July 15th to work out a new long term deal if a trade doesn't happen first. And, T. Higgins came out and said that he wants to stay with the team long term. But I think this says everything. There's been no contract talks for the last year. March 2023 was the last time that T. Higgins and the Cincinnati Bengals actually had contract talks. I don't know if that means contract talks that were gaining traction, just talking about it in general. I'm not sure, but that's what the reports are telling us. So that's what we have to go by. And I think it would benefit him already being, with Joe Burrow, with Zach Taylor, alongside Jamar Chase and Tyler Boyd as well. I think his targets could go up some. He could have better production, especially because of the situation that he's in. I think it's a solid situation for him. He was drafted by Cincinnati. He's probably got his roots out there. If he's got children, if he's got a lady, like they're all out there. And like we're going to talk about Mike Evans next. If a player ever has the chance to stay with a team that drafted them, because people don't think about, when you're a journeyman, when you're a guy like God, I'm trying to remember the wide receiver's name. Record amount of times he's been traded. Is it Robert Woods? I can't remember. There's
I
a
mean, it could
record
be
amount of
Robert.
times that a
Robert's been
wide
around the
receiver.
league a lot. Either him or Brandon Cooks.
Brandon Cooks, there we go. So journeyman. I think he's been traded like a record 5, 6, 7 times. People don't realize when you have to uproot and if you've got kids and if you've got a lady, like you're headed to another state. That doesn't mean you can immediately settle down, buy the house that you like. Like you're probably renting. You might be, not doing a month to month thing, but like you don't have that security. And I think a lot of people don't think about the fact that like when a player is drafted to a city that they've enjoyed being there with, that they've had success with, why would they want to leave?
Mm.
99% of the time it's because of the money. And like you can't blame these guys for not wanting to take a hometown discount, for wanting to chase bigger and better things. That's what it's all about, is being the best you can be, being in that top 1% of the 1% of the 1% in the National Football League. So I do think that it would definitely benefit him to stay with Cincinnati.